and the recording commences. There we are. So at 6 minutes past 7, with 48 people present, excellent stuff. I think we can make a formal start. As I say, my name is Danny McNamara, and I am one of the two co-secretaries of Green Left. Green Left is an eco-socialist tendency within the Green Party of England and Wales, which was formed almost 20 years ago, back in 2006. And amongst the many things that we do, we organise these discussion meetings several times every year. And we organise them on topics of interest to eco-socialists principally, but others on the left also. And you will have seen, because you're here, that this evening's topic is the Green Party and Electoral Alliances. And inevitably, inextricably tied up with a set of broader questions which concern the way forward for the left in Britain. And these questions, of course, are everywhere you look or everywhere you listen. They're on every left-leaning blog and every podcast that you could shake a stick at. And this set of questions has been exercising left-wing minds for quite some time, not least since a number of independents succeeded in gaining parliamentary seats at last year's general election. And the same set of questions became even more pressing just a few weeks later, when a number of Labour MPs lost a Labour whip over the two-child benefit cap. Recently, of course, conversation about these questions has reached a fever pitch following on stories about the proposed new left-wing initiative featuring Jeremy Corbyn and Zarah Sultana. And these questions are not going away anytime soon. Anyone with any compassion can see that many, many people in this country are basically on their knees. Poverty, inequality, bad housing, lack of opportunity, overstretched public services, they're everywhere you look. And the sense that Labour has no real interest in the radical solutions that would be urgently required to address these problems, well, that sense isn't new, but I don't think I have known it to be quite so stark and quite so pointy for a very, very long time indeed. So we all share a sense that we need to do something differently. There are enough of us collectively to change the dynamic of politics in the UK. But of course, the question is how we go about that. Well, I think we can probably all guess that the answer probably doesn't involve us splintering and fragmenting and fighting each other. And we can probably intuitively tell that the right answer will somehow involve us combining our efforts. So the question then becomes, well, how best do we do that? And already, wherever you look, there are lots of answers to that question or those questions mooted about all over the place. And tonight's panel for this meeting will be addressing some of those. And not least, of course, we'll be considering what role the Green Party should have in the middle of all of this. So to discuss this, we've got 4 panellists. Each of them will have an opportunity to speak in just a moment. And then after all 4 have spoken, we shall open it up for discussion and for questions. Now, before that point, I'm going to ask everyone who's not speaking to remain on mute. And I just want to advise everyone that we do plan to go straight through till 9 p.m. That's 9 p.m. without a break. And I recognise that that's a big, long run, a long time for many people. So if you do need a break, please switch your camera off, go up, get up, move around, do whatever, take a break. That's absolutely fine. We understand that entirely. And please don't worry, this debate is not going to finish this evening. This debate is going to run for some time after tonight. So our 4 panellists, I'll just introduce them in the order in which they are going to be speaking for us this evening. First, we shall have Beccy Sawridge. Beccy is a member of the Green Party. He's co-chair of Green Left. He's an active member in Kent of Stand Up to Racism and is the Equality Officer of the Unite Community branch in Kent. Unite Community, of course, being a community division of Unite the Union. After Beccy, we shall hear from Roger Silverman, and Roger is here representing the Campaign for a Mass Workers' Party. And I want to say a big thank you to Roger to coming along to what is essentially, it's not exclusively, but essentially a meeting of Green Party members to talk to us tonight. And, you know, we will extend every courtesy and warm welcome to Roger. After Roger, and if I could keep my earpiece in my ear, that would be really good. After Roger, we shall hear from Faiz Hassan, who is a Green Party member, once again, in this case of the West Central London Green Party. And then after that, we shall hear from Salma Ahmed from Transform. And again, Salma has bravely come along to what is largely a gathering of Green Party members, and we extend our gratitude and appreciation to Salma for doing that. And we're grateful for the opportunity to discuss these issues in the round with representatives of bodies other than the Green Party itself. So it is now 13 minutes past 10. What I'm going to do is hand over, first of all, to Beccy. And Beccy, you will have up to 15 minutes, let us say. Pardon me, there is no obligation, of course, to fill the 15 minutes. And the more time we have for discussion and questions at the end, generally the better. But please feel free to use up to 15 minutes. So at this point, straight over to you then, please, Beccy.
Hello, and thank you, friends. First of all, I better explain how I got into the Green Party and why I now consider myself to be an eco-socialist. Eco-socialism wasn't something that was really in my radar as a young woman. I've lived in Dover almost all of my life, and always been very active in left-wing groups, particularly in terms of animal rights activism and socialist groups. So although I supported many old school Labour Party members for many years, I didn't use the term eco-socialism for quite some time. I always described myself as an eco-warrior, and people understood that in terms of who I was and how I became involved in the political perspective. It was because I was very active for decades, actually, with the ban live exports issues here in Dover that were a huge issue down by the Eastern Docks from the days when I was a seafarer in the 1980s onwards. That I then became involved with Greens for Animal Protection. Excuse me, that's my cat who's not very well and making noises. That's Tia. But so if you hear this squeaking in the background, it's TT. So that was how I became involved with the Green Party, because I was very impressed by a large number of Green Party members, mostly around Ashford and around Ramsgate, who regularly came to Dover and stood with us down the docks at the miserable position where up to 30 trucks a day were going through in really squalid circumstances. And the government of the day didn't seem to be wanting to do anything about it. And we get sort of like occasional notable politicians, and including some who were absolutely 300% with us, i.e. Tony Benn, who had been a good friend of us when I was a seafarer. So that's how I came into the space of understanding what eco-socialism meant, and then the Green Party then became the natural space for me to be involved in. Aside from that, more than anything else, you can see by my phenotype is predominantly white, but I am of mixed heritage. And so I've always been involved with anti-racist campaigning, and that's one of the reasons why, particularly here in Dover, which has a large multicultural grouping, but which has also seen huge clashes, notably in 2016 when the riots were all over the papers and right-wing groups started coming down here. This was not new. I can remember as a teenager in the 1970s, you know, stand up bottle and flick knife fights on the beach and on the banks, and that's also one of the reasons why the far right now love to come down and sit on the seafront or occupy the seafront with the White Cliffs in the background, almost like this has become a talisman for them to be able to assert their particular type of nationalism that is really quite frightening, and which in the past decade or so has become even more prevalent. So those are the areas where I'm coming from, but I'm also talking here too about how our communities respond to things. And I know that what I deal with down here in Dover on a day in and day out basis, and where sometimes when people speak to me, I describe it as being in the belly of the beast sometimes when it comes to the anti-racist work that we do, that our communities then become the subject of really quite weird offerings by people from all sorts of walks of life. We can make sense of how the right want to make those conversations about boats, about being swamped, and all of that sort of like nonsense that they throw at us regularly, but that people of colour like myself are the ones that then feel the backlash of it. And someone like myself who's used to being vocal, has been here forever, and you know, understands how the community works, has then really, I'm not shocked at the way that the reform has really grown, particularly since Brexit. But I am concerned about the way that the narratives are now being woven into our political position without real fight back from the people that are supposed to be representing us, so that it becomes the job of all of us, every one of us, to make that space. Just showing up my little thing where that we've put out in the local elections, running up, you know, like here, where we're quite explicit that Reform UK is a racist party. It comes from Stand Up to Racism nationally, but this is the one that we put out around the areas, and it didn't have the purchase that the dialogue within the local Labour Party should have had, and that makes me both incredibly sad, but I've always been a thorn in their side anyway. Now, as Danny indicated, I've also been a trade unionist. As I said, I was a merchant seaman. At merchant seaman for several years, and that's where my political space comes from as a seafarer. But more important than that, it's a trade unionism that is internationalist, so that we don't make that space that says our place is just in the community where we live. It must be a broader perspective. She sounds terrible, doesn't she? Bless her heart. That international perspective also has racism in its UK format. My nickname when I worked on the ferries was the Squaw. Not that I have anything to do with Amerindians. My mother is of African descent, and my father was a white man from Leicester. But how we look, how people perceive us, then becomes the narrative by which the political classes describe us. And that's why I think we have to be very, very aware when we're thinking in terms of how we present ourselves on the left, particularly to people that don't want to see that international perspective and almost brush over it, so that multiculturalism becomes shaped in working class understanding that can never be diminished for seafarers because of the international perspective. But it becomes, I believe, a pseudo-intellectual label that the political class like to use. And I say that in terms of the community in which I've been brought up and which I understand, that comes from miners and seafarers and dock workers. And that we, in terms of the left, and I'm very proud and pleased to work alongside my colleagues in Green Left, we need to be doing that, stepping up, because I don't believe that the system that we have when we talk about proportional representation is going to step up, because there is too much vested interest in keeping a lid on things at this moment in time. But people are seeing through that, and that's why it's really important. So I think this is the perspective that I'm coming from, and that I wanted to give us. I'm sorry if I've been a bit heavy as the first speaker about that. We must challenge ourselves in terms of how we address our perspective going forward, and that giving ourselves the license to see ourselves in internationalist terms will allow us then to not only deal with the climate change, so that people have those conversations that say, when we have mad weather, we had floods down here in Dover, and there was all sorts of things. We get floods regularly because we live by the sea, and we're in a dip. But the flood warnings that are being now exacerbated by climate change are the things that people are talking about, and this transcends beyond the party politics that we need to take in our stride. I think that's all that I'm going to say now, because I'm sure that our other speakers will be a lot more eloquent in terms of the political nuances. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Beccy. A timely reminder of the imperative of rising above the tribal divisions that sometimes divide us on the left. Now, Matthew Passfield has a hand up. Matthew, if it's a point about the topic, it would be best perhaps if we could hold it off till later. If it's a sort of procedural point about the conduct of the meeting, great.
It is indeed procedural. Just to say that there are people in the waiting room waiting for the host to let them in to the call. So I think the host might be is that Peter
That's
Murray?
Peter, but
So you just need to click a button to let people in.
Now, Peter's been doing that as we've gone along.
Yes, I can see nobody in the waiting room at the moment.
Is it possible, Matthew, that they've gone to the wrong Zoom meeting?
I suppose anything is possible.
Well, I'll tell you what, I asked them to go to the email that contained the invitation and try again with that link, and we'll see what happens. And fingers crossed they'll show up in the waiting room and Pete can admit them. Great. Thank you.
We'll send them an email.
Go on to it now anyway.
Okay, so we're about to move on. So I mentioned earlier the running order. We may indeed have a slight change depending on whether or not Sulma is able to join us with the remaining time. But Sulma from Transform appears not to have arrived yet, unless she's arrived in the last few minutes. That being the case, we may have a last-minute substitution, and Joseph Healy has kindly agreed to stand in and make a contribution if Sulma is unable to join us. But that's further on down the running order, because next on the running order we come to Roger Silverman, and Roger is here from the campaign for a Mass Workers' Party, and I see from some of the Zoom names that we have some other representatives of the CMWP here also. Thank you very much indeed for coming. So Roger, for 15 minutes or so, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, comrade. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much to Beccy for that introduction, and thanks to the Green Left for the invitation. We're meeting at a significant moment in Britain's political history. When we launched our campaign, the Campaign for a Mass Workers' Party last year, we were just a handful of isolated socialists. But today, at the initiative of a newly revived wave of activists, the left has finally got its act together, and it's on the verge of the foundation of a new mass left party. And I would say that we're very grateful for the opportunity to participate in this discussion, and we have no hesitation in giving due credit to the Greens for their tireless campaigning and their early warnings of a climate crisis that is now raging all around us. The Green vote has risen steadily to nearly, I think, 2 million at the last general election. And this is a cause for congratulation. It's evidence of a welcome growth in awareness of the ecological catastrophe now not just looming ahead, but already wreaking havoc all around us. But as socialists, we have a special angle on this question. Environmental degradation is not the only, and not necessarily even the most immediate, threat to human life. It's just one morbid symptom of a deadly cancer that is simultaneously eating into all the vital organs of civilization. We're currently tracing the steps, one foot at a time, of a descent into hell. For nearly 2 decades, society has been plunged into a long economic malaise, and with just brief and minor respites, sinking into terminal decay. The world is teetering on the brink of a slump as deep as the Great Depression of the 1930s. And just as in the 1930s, in what is almost an uncanny reenactment, its inevitable consequence is an ugly rash of xenophobia, racism, and war. In the 1930s, it was the Spanish Civil War, the Italian invasion of Ethiopia, and the Japanese invasion of China. Today, a major war of attrition in Europe is already in its 3rd year, conducted by one side as a clandestine proxy war, and by the other, a nuclear superpower, as a full-scale invasion. In the Middle East, genocide, mass extermination, and a series of explosive wars. In the Indian subcontinent, a narrowly and only precariously averted war between 2 neighbouring nuclear powers. That's before we mention raging civil wars in Sudan, Yemen, the Congo, etc. This deep malaise is also reflected in capitalism's political system. The far right are in government, from the USA to Russia to India and throughout Europe, from Sweden, formerly the social democratic Mecca for half a century, from Italy, which used to have the strongest communist party outside of the Stalinist bloc, to most of the countries of the continent, soon to be followed probably by France, Germany, Spain, and we have a last warning, Britain too. And what in the 1930s was the inevitable outcome of the deepening economic slump? The erection of tariffs, an escalating trade war, the rise to power of xenophobic demagogues, the spreading cancer of racism and ultranationalism, world war. It was an outcome for which today all the governments around the world, from the USA and China to Europe and Britain, are actively and explicitly preparing now, pouring their money into rebuilding their nuclear arsenals in a suicidal and devastating arms race. Now, the Greens are, as I said, to be congratulated on having sounded the alarm on the environmental crisis. But that is not, in our opinion, the root cause of society's ills. It's only one of its many deadly and poisonous symptoms. And tinkering with the symptoms without tackling the disease is a deadly mistake, one with fatal consequences. The working class desperately needs an independent voice of its own, a world party. It's for the working class to rebuild society from the foundations upwards, to seize hold of the world's resources into its own hands and reshape the future. In the absence of a left challenge, the Greens became a default alternative. But according to our opinion, there is a crying need for a socialist voice. In its absence, improvised pop-up parties are appearing periodically, many of them revolving around charismatic personalities. But a mass working class party won't be built by self-appointed leaders with pre-packaged policies in search of a rank and file. That's fine for right-wing parties. All they need is a couple of billionaires and a media conglomerate. But it's no way to establish a party of the 99%. Now, when we come to the Greens, I hope comrades won't be offended if I say it's a little bit like a quack doctor seeking to treat the symptoms without tackling the underlying malady. And whenever entrusted with real state power, the chance to prove their credentials, with the very best of intentions, the Greens have let their supporters down. In Germany, they capitulated on their commitments against a reliance on coal and against an arms race and war preparations. I'm not saying that's through cowardice or corruption, not at all, but it's the inevitable perverse consequence of trying to tackle the symptoms and not the disease. And when we come to Britain, again, we don't feel put out by my making this point, but you can understand why we question what confidence we could have in an alliance with the Greens. They stood against Liam Mohammed, a left Labour candidate in Ilford North, letting Wes Street retain his seat. They stood a candidate against Jeremy Corbyn in 2017 and again in 2019 and even in 2024 when he was standing as an independent candidate in defiance of Starmer. And today too, the Green Party insists on fighting every constituency. We welcome the emergence of a left challenge to the Green establishment, but we recognise the left Greens are really allies in our common struggle. But we can be forgiven also for some doubt and some mixed feelings. For instance, Zach Polanski stood as a local council candidate for the Lib Dems while they were still in coalition and collaborating in austerity politics with the Tories. He joined the Greens in 2017 at the height of the Corbyn surge. As a London Assembly member, what is he doing to address the crisis of 366,000 households on council waiting lists? And after the Grenfell horror, what is he doing as chair of the London Assembly Fire Committee to reverse austerity cuts in the fire service or to act on the thousands of homes still with unsafe cladding? What does he say about the £51 million cuts made by Bristol City Council, which has a Green Party council leader? Let me repeat again, we don't question the Greens' sincerity and commitment, But trying to tackle one manifestation of the disease without a comprehensive overall plan to overthrow capitalist rule and operate a socialist plan, the Greens will remain helpless and impotent. So, if I can finish by asking, what are the prospects for the creation of a new mass left party? Until recently, of course, all we had heard from the mainstream left were Delphic hints of a coming pronouncement to be made sometime in the future. But today we can be confident we really are about to witness the dawn of a new party, and it's not a day too soon. Because all around the world, as I said before, the tide of the far right is surging, and we could soon see the plague spread still further, including to Britain, where every day of further delay brings us hurtling closer towards the disaster of a reform government. In last year's election, how was it that Labour won? It had the support of just 20% of registered voters. Even among the less than 60% who voted, by the way, the lowest turnout, I think, for decades, Labour and the Tories together got only 57.4% of the vote, the lowest in over a century. Labour's vote actually dropped from 12.9 million in 2017 and 10.3 million in 2019, both under Corbyn, to 9.7 million in 2024 under Starmer. Labour only won an overwhelming majority of seats because in 2019 the Tories had in effect an electoral pact with Farage's Brexit party, giving them 14 million votes. This time, we have to say, the so-called Labour landslide, the total vote for the Tories plus reform still exceeded Labour's by 1.2 million. The most significant features of the general election are the record low turnout, the high vote for none of the above candidates, and that means not just Reform but also the Lib Dems, Corbyn, Independents, near misses for left candidates in other constituencies, and of course the Greens, who, congratulations to them, did win 4 seats and nearly 2 million votes. But also, most ominously, the 4 million votes for the racist far-right party Reform. And the main thing that came out of the election is it's the end of traditional Tory rule. But despite the hollow parliamentary victory, it's the end of Labour too. Those who decry the evils of the two-party system are now way out of date, because both the traditional two parties are on the verge of being wiped out. It's the end of centuries of traditional Tory rule, and it's also the end of Labour. There's a huge gap, therefore, in British politics, and we need a mass left alternative. And the prospects are overwhelmingly positive, because where's the basis for such a party? In the 500,000 who surged to join Labour when Corbyn, to his own surprise, won the leadership. From the near 13 million votes won in the 2017 election under Corbyn's leadership, which, apart from Scotland, was Labour's best result for decades. In Labour's second best vote this century, yes, in 2019, which was written off as a disaster, but it was still, as I say, the second best result, far better than Starmer got this time round, winning still 10.3 million votes. Under Corbyn, Labour won its 2 successive highest votes this century. And it's out of despair for the lack of an alternative, and due, we have to say, to fatal hesitation on the left, that perilously Farage scooped up those 4 million votes. Another consequence, of course, was the nearly 2 million who opted by default to vote Green. And Corbyn's spectacular victory as an independent candidate in Islington North was yet another pointer to the potential success of a new mass left party. So I'd finish by saying this: we do desperately need a voice, a mass political party that stands not for the billionaire parasites, but for the 99%. In its absence, a number of maverick formations have sprung up. And despite its creditable impact, we have to say that we don't believe that the Greens will substantially grow. And why? Because for all its good intentions, and it's good, partially very appropriate programme. It does lack a solid working class base. With the new Left Party still in its embryonic form, within days, tens of thousands have signed up. Actually, the potential membership of the New Left Party already outnumbers the membership of the Green Party. Why do we have confidence in its potential? Because it has roots in the traditions of the working class. The old industrial labour base may have gone, but the working class is as strong as ever. In 1983, there was an opinion poll before the destruction of industry, and 60% of the population declared themselves as working class. What's the figure today, the corresponding figure? It's still 60%. Look around you. In the last couple of years, we've had a
one minute, please, Roger.
Sorry, just finishing the last 2 minutes, please, if you don't mind. In the last couple of years, we've had a rise in strikes, trade union militancy, railway workers, nurses, doctors, teachers, lawyers, and none of these are affiliated to the Labour Party. Sooner or later, they'll come to realise, as did the trade unionists 125 years ago, that they too need a political voice. I don't believe they'll turn to Starmer's Labour Party. I don't believe they'll turn to the Greens. And when we talk about the other sections of the working class, organised in Labour-affiliated unions, why would they stay with a party that is representing their enemy class? Why they'll be saying, why are we paying our hard-earned wages, our precious affiliation fees to this anti-union government? I don't believe they'll flock to the Greens. I think they will affiliate to a new party. So finally, the scientists say nature abhors a vacuum. Politics too abhors a vacuum. A new party of the left is being created because millions of people are desperately crying out for it. No force on earth could hold back the tide. And you Green campaigners have shown vision and courage. You've inspired many young people, and we would welcome the opportunity to work alongside you. If you're willing to align with the new Left Party, I'm sure it would be happy to consider adjustments and alliances in appropriate constituencies. But above all, we would hope that you would think seriously about breaking decisively and joining the central struggle of our epoch, the fight for a new world. We wouldn't reject an electoral agreement with left Greens in certain constituencies where the demographics justify it, but now at last, the vacuum is at last being filled. We have at least a fighting chance to rally behind a full-blooded socialist alternative, and we would urge you to consider making the decisive break and joining forces with us to build a mass socialist party. Thank you very much for listening to me, comrades, and I'm sorry if I went on a little long.
Not at all. Thank you, Roger, and all credit to you and much gratitude for pulling no punches and presenting us with a challenging picture, but in a very measured and polite way. And I'm sure that there will be lots of people here who are not in agreement with your assessment and who will wish to talk about it. But the same obligation is placed on them as you have just fulfilled, and that's the obligation to keep it polite and measured. So happy to have discussion about that, but urge everyone to keep it temperate. Also, I've noticed there's a great deal going on in the chat, which is fair enough, and that often happens with these Zoom meetings. But please do think of people who may be cognitively challenged when trying to process information in several ways all at once, listening to the speaker and watching the chat, and think about them and how we might be causing information overload and some discomfort. So let's moderate it if we can. But thank you very much indeed for that, Roger, very stimulating. Next, we're going to go to a Green Party member from the West Central London Green Party, Faiz Hassan. Faiz, you have about 15 minutes. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Danny. Hi, everyone. My name is Faiz. I'm based in West Central London. I got radicalized in politics during the Corbyn years. I worked and was an activist then, but very soon after the Starmerite takeover, I was disgruntled, and like so many other Labour comrades, I have been working with the Greens for the past few years. Look, I listened to Roger very carefully. I think his diagnosis of the problems that we face is very dire and is very correct. I think these are very dark times for UK politics. I think there is ever rising far right rhetoric. I think there is targeting of immigrants, demonization of Muslims. There is a rollback of LGBT rights. There is a criminalization of peaceful protest. There is net zero has become a dirty word, and so these are very difficult times. And what we see is the rise of reform, a string of right-wing rabid Tory leaders moving further to the right, Starmer chasing them as he continues his factional battles with the left of his party. The Lib Dems, cautious as always, cautious or unprincipled, perhaps, and sort of very focused on defending the seats that they've managed to take off the Tories. And I think in this environment right now, the Green Party is the only mainstream party of the left. And I am very proud of that position. I think we have, if you look at our policy proposals, if you look at our manifesto, I think it is very favorable or very comparable to the Labour manifestos of 17 and 19. And these are all things that, as lefties, we should have no hesitation of signing up to. Whether it's on the wealth tax, on nationalization, on public spending. If you look at our membership, survey after survey will show that we are far more left-wing than any other party. If you ask them, is capitalism a source of evil or good, etc., it will always be the Greens, the Green Party members and the Green Party voters which will call this out. If you ask our voters whether they are left-leaning or right-leaning, they will be the most left-leaning of them all. So I think this sort of caricature of Greens as somehow sort of middle-class tree-huggers is very much out from a different past. So that is my sort of, I guess, starting point. Look, we realize that we have a massive shift to the right. The Overton window has moved to the right, and we need to fight it. And for this, we need alliances and we need to work alongside other parties. Earlier today, I have filed a submission to a motion to our conference with the help of several people on this call, asking the Green Party to consider election alliances for not only the next general election, but for the local elections before that, right? And so we are very aware of what happened in 2024, and we do not want to have a repeat of that situation, right? Now, as far as this new mass party Roger was talking about, look, we have been waiting for this party for 5 years, if not more. This should have happened when Starmer sidelined Corbyn. It has still not happened. We have no visibility, no timing, no clue in terms of what it will look like. But what we are saying to you is we will not want a fragmentation of the left, and we are willing to work alongside all these leftist groupings, right? Now, and I think as far as, look, I think Corbyn is a special person in the left. I mean, he embodies a lot of, and he has a certain connection with all sorts of voters, whether it's the youth or it's the global majority or ethnic minorities or working class, etc. And he is a valuable asset. And we want him to be in this fight against reform alongside with us. I respect Zarah Sultana. She's a woman of color. She's a Muslim. She's young. She's effective on the social media. We see these people as potential friends, as allies, right? However, at the same time, we are a substantial party. We have 860 or so councillors. We had 1.8 million votes. We will be happy to treat with people on the basis of respect, on the basis of reciprocity, but we will not be making unilateral concessions for parties with no names and no other track records. The other thing I'd like to say is the electoral calendar is relentless. There will be elections in May of 26, where there are about 5,000 council seats. Then there will be elections in May 27, with 10,000 council seats. And then you have 2028, where there will be mayoral elections. And then 29, there'll be more council elections then potential general election if Starmer lasts that long. I hope he doesn't, but that's the reality. And in that situation, we do not have time. We are already 10 months away in London. And I'll talk a bit more about London because I live in London and I've been following the political environment a bit closer. So there are 1,800 council seats which are up for renewal. Labour has 1,200 of them. Labour has lost 67% of the seats it was defending in May 25. Their vote is in free fall. So it is important for the left. And when I say left, I mean left and the Greens, because I see us very much part of that grouping. It is critical for us to step into this. Otherwise, you will have people who are extremely disgruntled with the two-party system going and voting for reform. And we've started seeing that happen. And I think unless we move quickly, we will be doing a great injustice to them all. I'm also, sorry, the motion is there for people to see. I think there are massive sort of rewards through coordination, right? There are 5 mayoralty seats in London up for re-election. There are the London elections, the way they're designed, there's 679 wards. Every ward has three councillors, or most of them have 3 councillors. There is ample room for adjustment, but this adjustment has to be on the basis of respect and reciprocity. In terms of then we have Wales. I mean, Labour is already the 3rd party in Wales, right? And with Plaid and Reform ahead of that. Again, the Greens have a presence. It is a relatively modest presence, but we do want to build on it. And again, electoral arrangements are things that could be very beneficial for us. Let me just see. Yeah, I think I've sort of whizzed through most of my comments a bit more quickly than expected. So,
okay.
Danny, shall I put a pause to it? And I'm very happy to elaborate on any questions or etc. And maybe we can have a longer Q&A session.
Excellent. Sure thing. Much appreciated, Faiz. Thank you very much indeed. Now, there are a number of people attending the meeting whose Zoom names are sort of slightly anonymous things, such as MN001. That's just a random example, but that does mean that Solma, it's conceivable that Solma is with us, has just so far undetected. So if Solma is with us, I'd like to create the space for Solma to speak. If not, and I can see Joseph is already in position with his hand up. Joseph Healy, who will be well known to many who have been in the Green Party for a long time. Joseph is a former member of the Green Party and indeed of Green Left. Joseph is also from Transform, the organisation that Solma would have represented. And I suspect, Joseph, your hand is up to tell us that Solma is definitely not going to be with us. You're nodding your head. So given that unexpected last-minute change, Joseph has very kindly indeed to speak on behalf of Transform or contribute to the debate from the Transform perspective. Much appreciated, Joseph. So I'll hand over to you without any further ado. You have up to 15 minutes. Joseph, please.
Thank you, Danny. Well, as you said at the beginning, I was one of the founder members of Green Left 20 years ago. There's a tremendous sense of deja vu in all of this for me because I was part of that project that tried to move the Green Party to the left at that time, which, you know, is part of what's happening, part of what the debate is about now. And we failed. And I have to say that a lot of the people who resisted us are the same people who are now standing against or proclaiming themselves against Zach Polanski. So I think it's there's a repeat of history in all of this for me. I left principally around the issues of austerity because the Green Party at the time was not prepared to challenge austerity when it was in office, particularly in Brighton. And the Green Left, to its credit, always opposed that. And I'm glad to see many comrades that I know here today. I agree with some of the points that Roger has made. He's stolen some of my lines, quite important points. But I just want to say a little bit about Transform first. So Roger referred to pop-up parties, and I suppose in some ways we could be described as a pop-up party in that we were only formed less than 2 years ago. We didn't have any charismatic celebrity, big names. And so the end result was we didn't really grow much beyond about 1,000 members. We have taken part a little bit in elections, not to a great extent because of limited capacity and so on. But one of the things we were very clear about at our conference last year was that we did want to engage in this project about a new mass party of the left. And we've had 2 delegates attending the talks regularly over the last almost a year, one of whom is on the secretariat of Collective. Now, we were told at our conference last year that the new party would be getting off the ground by March of this year. Obviously, that didn't happen. We have been very frustrated by the glacial pace of the talks, by the secrecy surrounding the talks, which I think has produced some of the negative fallout that's happening at the moment, with leaks to the press and all the rest. And I'm hoping that initial shambolic appearance, that can be sorted out very, very soon. But we are absolutely committed to a democratic process, to openness, and to the involvement of as many people as possible in that development. When the Greens originally were being challenged about austerity, the mantra of the Green Party was neither left nor right. And a lot of Greens held that position, albeit, I left the party in 2012, so it is 13 years ago. I've been assured by lots of people that the party has changed fundamentally, but I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and Roger has referred to some of the things that have happened with other Green parties. I mean, I've been a follower and a critic for a long time of the Irish Greens, whose record is pretty disastrous in government. We're seeing today a lot of discussions with Macron and agreements about refugees crossing the channel. One of the biggest issues will be climate refugees. I mean, I think Zoe Gardner, who's been on Newsnight and so on a number of times, has said, if you think the situation is bad now, it's going to be 100 times worse once the climate begins to break down. That will, of course, feed into the far right and the sort of anti-migrant racist feelings that are there at the moment. And I think our biggest challenge, apart from the climate, is fighting fascism. We are now, I believe, in the foothills of fascism. We're seeing all across Europe the rise of the far right. We've seen the appalling opinion polls here projecting a reform government in 4 years' time. And the Labour Party has been the gatekeeper to fascism. Everything that Starmer is doing is laying the groundwork for a future fascist regime. Labour has turned its fire on the disabled and the most vulnerable. Yesterday, I took part in the protests at Parliament about the Universal Credit Bill. And I have to say that one of the few people who crossed the road to speak to the disabled activists was Jeremy Corbyn. who gave them his full support. Where were the Green MPs? Nowhere to be seen, too busy in their offices. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. If you're going out and actually meeting people, meeting the oppressed, taking part in campaigns and demonstrations, that is the important point, standing in solidarity. The tectonic plates of British politics are changing, as someone said earlier. If we look at the situation in Wales, there's a real danger that next year reform could become effectively the Welsh government. We have to use everything in our arsenal to oppose reform and to oppose fascism. That is why I believe that the new party, as soon as it gets up and running, that its timeline must be to take part in those elections next year, both in London, in Wales, and in other local elections. I think to delay the establishment of the party later than the 2026 elections would be a monumental strategic error. And I have said that to Transform and anywhere that we have had an opportunity to put our views. I have to say I'm very disappointed to see some of the sectarian comments in the chat from Greens. You know, we are the only party, we are the way, the light and the truth. That's not going to get us anywhere. We have to come together, those of us in the Green left, Green socialists, socialists outside the Greens, we have to make common purpose. We have a common enemy. If we don't wake up and smell the coffee, we will all find ourselves in the same detention camps in a few years' time. That is the lesson of history. That is the lesson of the 1930s and the rise of fascism. I would hope, I think that many people who are joining the Green Party to vote for Zach Polanski at the moment will probably leave if he doesn't win. That is my reading of the situation. I think if he does win and he puts out his hand to the left, then we have a very positive situation. And with the new party, I would hope that, you know, practical deals can be done in electoral terms. I'm not going to break down into all the places and constituencies and so on. That's, you know, that's for another day. But I think both parties have certain strengths. Both parties have areas where they're in a stronger position. I think the blueprint for me is the Popular Front in France, where faced with the danger of Le Pen and a fascist regime, a number of parties of the left, including the Greens, came together to form a common front. This was often the way in which the left opposed fascism in the 1930s, albeit not always successfully, but it is a tried and tested method. And I think it's something we need to be supportive of and aware of. The latest opinion polls, I know I spoke to Pete about this and he doesn't believe in opinion polls, but the latest opinion poll suggests that the new Jeremy Corbyn-led party with Zarah Sultana would take 18% of the vote, would take 29% of the vote in London, and would be the most popular party amongst the young. That has major implications for the Greens, has major implications for any unification on the left. But, you know, the figures are there, and as Roger said, it would have a tremendous pulling power, which the Greens wouldn't have at the moment. So we have to take all of that into consideration. Finally, I would just say that the sand is running through the glass. We don't have much time. We have elections next year. And as I said, on the horizon, the prospect of a fascist government. So I think we need to, all of us, wake up, smell the coffee, and work together.
Thank you very much indeed, Joseph. So we've heard from 4 speakers, 2 from the Green Party, 2 from other organisations, and they will have an opportunity to sum up briefly towards the end of the meeting, so we'll come back to them. and perhaps we'll ask them to address some of the questions that will be raised during the discussion. So I can see people are already doing what I am about to ask people to do, which is, if you wish to speak, to use your Zoom hand. Now, the thing is, we've got 50 odd people here. I can only see 25 of them at any one time. So if you use your physical hand and you're on my second screen or my third screen, I won't see you. If you use your Zoom hand, you will be pushed onto my front screen and I will see you and I will try to call you. Some people have difficulty using mice and keyboards and all the rest of it and cannot use the Zoom hand. If that's the case, then please use your voice to attract my attention, but please be courteous and do it while someone else is speaking. If I call you, please come off Zoom. Try to make your remarks brief and to the point. And in the meantime, if everyone else can stay on Zoom, please. So I already have 7 people queued up. So I'm going to ask people to be brief if they can, and we'll go first to Alan Todd, please.
All right, thank you. And first of all, thank you for putting this together. And I think the fact that there's so many people on this, I see it's 55 participants now, gives an indication of how people are feeling. We are in desperate situation now. And several speakers, including Joseph, has made it absolutely clear how we don't have a lot of time left to get our act together to combat the creeping fascism that is the threat posed by Farage and his lot. And I will just make a couple of quick points. First of all, I'll read out something that Trotsky said at the end of 1931, when the Communist Party and the Social Democratic Party refused to work together against the rising Nazi Party. And it was basically, should fascism come to power, it will ride over your skulls and spines like a terrific tank. Your salvation lies in merciless struggle, and only a fighting unity with the social democratic workers can bring victory. Make haste, worker communists, you have very little time left. And we do, I seriously think, like Joseph said, have very little time left. 2 things I would say. First of all, about the new party. I think it is a brilliant initiative, and I'm going to upset people now. I think we've been talking about this for 5 years. I am in anti-capitalist resistance, but I'm also in Transform. And quite frankly, after the debacle at the end of last week, I think we've reached a stage now where we have to say to Jeremy Corbyn, you either start walking the walk or go and sit on the sidelines, and we will do this without you. If you want to come in and join once it's up and running, all well and good. The one other thing I would say about the new party, which I do find dispiriting, I hear socialism, 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 socialism. I hardly ever hear eco-socialism. And climate emergency, climate crisis is almost like a thing that's tagged on at the end rather than being a core thing. The vast bulk of victims of climate breakdown and ecological degradation are working class people around the world. And that new party, if it wants to pull in as many young people as possible who are involved in XR, Just Stop Oil, youth demand and so on, they're going to have to make this a more serious thing. And the last point I will make is, and Joseph sort of stole my thunder on this, the very least we need is something like the new Popular Front that stopped Marine Le Pen being able to get into power. And I think it would be, and I speak as somebody who was in the Green Party and Green Left from 2012 to 2019 and played a part working with Mike Shaughnessy and Green Left in setting up the Eco-Socialist Alliance. I think the one thing that the Green Party needs to do is to say, we don't need an alliance with the Lib Dems. We don't need to focus on soft Tories. We now need to be moving much more to the left. And if we do get a new party, then we will work with that in some way or another. And it's absolutely crucial that we have this new party in place for the elections in 2026, again, which 2 or 3 speakers have commented on. That's me done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Next we go to Matthew, and after Matthew it will be Angry. Matthew, please.
Okay, yeah, thanks, comrades. No, it's useful. I think the important thing about this is that there is a debate, and there should be a continuing debate. And I think that it's been taken very positively by people, and that's useful. And we should continue it, absolutely. The second thing I think is also to recognise, as the comrade just said, it's great to see people quoting Trotsky, is the class nature of society. The domination of the ruling class, and the ruling class is moving towards, the far right, and is also absolutely refusing to concede reforms, unless, of course, it's under threat. Its power is under threat. It will not concede reforms. They made that quite clear, and they're determined to continue looting, and it's open, naked looting now. Of the society and the accumulation of wealth in the smaller number of people's hands. Secondary to that, of course, is imperialism. And people have to recognize, first of all, recognize the nature of the system we live under. And then, of course, obviously recognize the importance of imperialism as a means of dominating the world. And we see this, obviously, things like, NATO, absolutely central to it, to the domination of the rest of the world. The imperialist countries run the world in their own interest, as we can see. And it is imperialism, and not just Israel. Israel is merely the instrument of imperialism that wishes to crush the Palestinians. And we can see that, obviously, in terms of the methods that are being used in this country against the Palestine movement. The question really then is to resist the imperialists, and form alliances internationally in terms of actually supporting those resisting imperialism, and of course calling for the dissolution of things like NATO, which is it is driving towards a world war. That's the other thing that ruling class is going for, is world war, and we absolutely have to oppose that tooth and nail, whether that's in Ukraine or Palestine or wherever, or Iran or wherever else, and that's central. I think it is also. I think people have been open in terms of actually we need to cooperate, which is true. We do need to cooperate. I think obviously the thing is going to be fluid in terms of the evolution of a new party and the rest of it. But people need to cooperate, in those terms. And at the same time, as I say, it's central that there has to be a political debate around. What is happening in the nature of society, and that in that way we can move it forwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. So next we'll go to Anne Gray, and Anne will be followed by Eugene. Anne, please, over to you.
Thank you. I want to make a point about electoral alliances and the value of a social movement. I'm very concerned that an attempt to form a new party as such will result in all sorts of difficulties about what is our joint platform, what is our joint membership, people having sectarian or other perhaps more legitimate attachments to one position or another. What I think is a real tragedy in the experience of 2024 was the fact that the Green Party insisted on standing everywhere, even against people like Liane Mohammed. And I would like to see a reversal of that policy by the Green Party, and an adoption of a notion that people look for the candidate who is most likely to defeat Reform / the Tories / Labour at the next election. And that involves an alliance. It involves the possibility of a social movement that would back and facilitate and grow that alliance. So let's look to something which is a bit more like momentum than the whole idea of a new party. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. So next we're going to Eugene and then to Salem. Eugene, there you are, Eugene. Sorry, because you went on mute and took your hand down, you moved on my screen. Eugene, please, over to you.
Brilliant. It's great to see the indomitable spirit of the youth on the call. I wanted to make a couple points about sort of the category of the population that I think we all fall into, which is this activist left group, where there seems to be sort of a contradiction between people loving the word socialism, can't stop using the word socialism, and then bending over backwards for centre-left reformist social democracy with the likes of Jeremy Corbyn and other Labour Party career politicians. That doesn't seem to gel. I mean, the Independent Alliance, which has been sort of this hubbub in the left, they couldn't even agree on voting for VAT on private schools. And, you know, even in the Green Party, Adrian Ramsey, who I don't think many people in this call will be particularly enthusiastic about, backed that and has been more progressive than a lot of this. So I wonder, sort of, if we are going for social democracy and we want these sort of broad commitments to peace and mild reforms to capitalism that the likes of this new party seem to be espousing, would it be best to go with the Green Party that has been sort of espousing that social democracy for a very long time? And if not, then should we perhaps consider not going for a social democratic party and actually doing some sort of socialism? And if we do want a party of the working class, I do wonder why the Green Party is always sort of ignored in that, when we are actually very strong on the ground in places like the Red Wall, in all sorts of communities. We've won seats in places as diverse as you can think, whereas the demographics that get really enthusiastic about the sort of explicitly socialism versus barbarism sort of politics is a much more narrow segment of the population. So sort of question to the panelists, and also just to sort of tack on to that, the figures who do represent this radical social democracy seem to be allergic to mentioning the Green Party. I don't remember the last time Jeremy Corbyn uttered the words Green Party, whereas Zach Polanski and other leaders in the Green Party have been extremely vocal, saying we want to work together for years. If this new party falls apart, which with the immediate lack of collective discipline is a real possibility, with the very real threat of fascism on the doorstep, will this rest of the left finally say, why don't we give the Green Party a shot? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Eugene. And sorry, I can't help noticing, I think your point is well made about the age demographic of this meeting. I don't think that's always the case in Green Party meetings. For example, if you were to attend a meeting of Greens for Palestine, you would find that the demographic was headed in the opposite direction. And
it's tongue in cheek. I'm on the like young Greens exec. So
so yeah, and you know, if ever you or any of your friends would like to come and pick up the burden of Green Left from some of us persons who are perhaps more senior, we would be extremely appreciative, because I think from what you say, it sounds as if maybe you're coming from the right place. Anyway, next we're going to go to Salem, and after Salem we're going to go to Aussie, and then we have quite a few queued up after that. So Salem, please.
So I was listening to what Anne said about kind of standing down, and sort of mentioned what about what happened with Liam Mohammed, etc. And also Fire's talking about his motion. Like, it'd be interesting to read the content of that. I'm kind of not suspicious, wrong word, but I kind of slightly worry about the idea of standing down. We had the Unite to Remain pact that happened with Lib Dems, like where I live, and our experience actually was that a lot of the Lib Dems stood down, and we stood against Labour in Bristol Central and lost. This was last year, was before that, obviously. And a lot of the Lib Dem voters actually went to Labour rather than to us. So I don't think those kind of pacts necessarily work. But one possible alternative is the idea of a joint ticket, and so I think that'd be also more sellable to like Green Party conference, where it seems as a very kind of strong will for everyone to be able to vote Green no matter where you live. And if we can stand everywhere while also not competing with someone like Liam Mohammed, for example, that would mean that someone can vote Green without this kind of new left resurgent party, whatever form that takes, possibly, taking any kind of votes from us, if that makes sense. But it would be dependent on candidates aligning with Green Party policy. I don't think we should stand on a joint ticket with everyone who says they're on the left. For example, the kind of famous examples, sort of George Galloway and a couple of like his candidates and stuff, said they were on the left. They arguably were in some aspects, but I don't think it's. A lot of people would say they're not really in line with Green Party policies. On things like the climate crisis and trans rights, etc. I wouldn't want us to see us join this joint ticket with them, so it would depend. But yeah, I think within that we should kind of retain our own candidate selection, kind of independence in that regard. But yeah, I've spoken for a while now.
Thank you, Salem. So Faiz's motion will be posted on the agenda forum, and you can read the full text there, and there is, as always, an opportunity to comment on it. And I think I shouldn't anticipate what Faiz will say, but I think we would probably say that there are many ways in which the principle of cooperation between parties can be implemented, whether it's one party stands down or one party stands down here and another stands down in a different place to the mutual benefit of both, or whether we have a joint ticket or a united front, whatever. There are lots of mechanisms, and the debate as we go through time will begin to laser in on those different mechanisms. So your thoughts come at a good time, and you're well placed to input to that debate before things start to settle down in one form or another. So in a moment we're going to go to Ozzy, and then it will be Steve Williams, and then we still have some queued up after that. So Ozzy, please, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Chair. My name's Andrew Osborne, please call me Ozzy. I'm a sort of a senior United representative based in Cambridge Engineering Branch, and a member of the Green Party for the last couple of years. So in Cambridge, we've recently taken some serious seats off Labour, including one of their strongholds, where I live, Romsey Town. So basically, it's, people talk about the St Anne's ward in Tottenham, where the Greens overturned the Labour's council seat, and that was regarded as a high watermark. In Cambridge, Romsey Town was an equally high watermark. Turning over that was a significant victory. And that was one of the 3 council seats we took at the last election in Cambridge. And we're actually in second place in the constituency. Now, I've been listening to this conversation, and I'm slightly concerned about the polemical nature of a lot of the interventions. It's like it was really just like soapbox stuff rather than actual reality and just getting involved and stuff. So I mean, I've been involved in lots of these discussions. People phone up Cambridge and ask for left. They normally get me on the end of the phone, and so yeah, I know roughly what's going on, sort of. And like I say, in terms of electoral alliances, I don't believe that the New Left Party was standing against the Greens in Cambridge. I think the Greens can take the Cambridge parliamentary constituency. Like I say, we're in second place now after those council elections. And that's going to be difficult for some comrades in Cambridge. But I think it's important that happens. And I think that we need to work together. I think, obviously, Zach Polansky winning the Green leadership is a given and an important step forward. I don't think the left will talk to Adrian Ramsey, for God's sake. I certainly wouldn't personally. So that's the first step. And yeah, I mean, in Cambridge, we obviously see the splits. I mean, obviously, we've got Adrian Ramsey in Waveney Valley, which is obviously East Anglia, which is near us. And there are a section of the Green Party in Cambridge who I would call posh gardeners. And there are a section of the Green Party in Cambridge who are working class fighters and socialists. And we have a healthy tension. We occasionally bang heads and don't come to blows, thank God. But we do have disagreements, and we tend to normally win on the left, which is a good thing. So I think it's important that we have this discussion. But I think this is slightly too abstract. I think we need to get into nitty-gritty and stuff and say we need to obviously win the Green executive with Zach Polansky's leadership, and then we need to engage in positive discussions with the New Left Party with a serious electoral alliance. I think the only solution is a green-red pact, and that involves us, the Green Party, working with the New Left Party and making it serious, and that means us standing down in various seats and doing that very seriously and campaigning for this New Left Party. And yeah, thank you for your time. Cheers.
Thank you, Ozzy. That was very clear. Next, we're going to go to Steve Williams, and after that to Linda Walker. So, Steve, please.
Hi, thanks. It's been really interesting discussion, and I think number of people on the call is indicative of the kind of mood at the moment. I mean, I think one clear lesson that I think we can get from the discussion that we've had at this meeting so far is that the left, it is crucial that the left is united. And, you know, many of the speakers have that sort of real and genuine and serious threat of fascism in our country, the real genuine threat of the far right. And that makes it absolutely imperative that, you know, when the chips are down, in the final analysis, the left is united. And we can talk about the fronts and we can talk about previous precedents, but all history actually demonstrates that, you know, the left divided will actually be defeated. So really, what I'm concerned about here is that in our first past the post system, I think where, you know, we're talking about new parties proliferating, we know that under our current electoral system, it is very, very difficult for new parties to break through. I mean, heavens, you know, look at how difficult it has been for the Green Party, notwithstanding the broad support that they command actually in the country. So I think we're now in a situation where we've got a Green Party that is shifting. I think people from the left of the Labour Party are now flocking into the Green Party, and the election of Zach as leader, and I very much hope that's what's going to happen, that will accelerate this. And as you know, as people flocked to the Labour Party when Jeremy Corbyn was elected. And I think we're seeing a similar kind of momentum, to use that term, at the moment. So, you know, I think it's at that point, after that leadership election, you know, where we'll be able to sort of see what's happening. That's the point where I think we'll need to assess the position with regard to, you know, how the left is looking. And I would predict that, you know, again, assuming that Zach is elected, and as I say, very much hope that he is, what we'll find is that the predominant party of the left at that time will be the Green Party. But going back to the point that I made at the outset, the important thing is that whatever our political tribes, we've actually got to stand together because the stakes are so high. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. So now it's almost 8:30. I've got a number of speakers who have indicated they're lined up, and we will come to them. So that will be Linda and Amina and How and Lubna. So that's 4. I think I'm going to draw a line under things after Lubna. We'll see what the time is like, but probably that will close that part of the meeting. We shall see. And then at that point, I'm going to go back to our speakers in the same sequence in which we heard from them at the beginning of the meeting, and give them each an opportunity to round up or sum up for 2 to 3 minutes, and if they wish to respond to some of the points that have been made. So probably not any use putting your hand up now. But if you have your hand up already, and there are 4 people who have, there's Steve Jackson just put his hand up. We'll see if we can squeeze Steve in at the end, but it might be difficult. But no more hands, please, because we do need to start thinking about how the process of closing this down. Linda Walker, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely agree. We have to work together, or we are going to get a reformed government. And if people are not involved in their local We Demand Change movement, I would really urge people to get involved in that. At the big We Demand Change summit in London, Zach was one of the key speakers there. There were 2,000 people there. He's been working with the left ever since then, and probably before. And as people have said, it's crucial that Zach is elected. And we all kind of think he's going to be elected, but we're all on the left of the party. So we've got to do everything possible to get more people to join and vote for Zach. And one of the other key things I think we have to do is change our policy on NATO, which has also been mentioned before. We have a resolution to conference to say that the Green Party should leave NATO. If we were in power, we would leave NATO. We need to get that on the conference agenda and we need to pass it. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's talked to lots of people on the left who've said, well, I would join the Green Party, but you've got such a terrible policy on NATO. And our NATO policy is actually quite ambivalent, but it's read by everybody as being pro-NATO. So we've got to get Zach in because he really wants to work with the left. And I fear if we had Adrian and Ellie as leaders, we might end up with a situation again where the party is saying we've got to stand a candidate everywhere. And that will be a total disaster. I don't know about a formal alliance, but we've got to have an agreement where we've got really strong Green candidates in an area where they've got a good chance, then the other party stands down for us and vice versa. And we support each other. And we won't agree on everything, but we'll all be so much closer in what we want for this country than any of the other parties. Labour is finished for decades, I think. And this new party, I'm sure it will take off. And it has to have Jeremy Corbyn because he is such a draw to so many people. And I wouldn't agree with the young man who says he's a social democrat. I think that's most unfair analysis of a really genuine international socialist. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And next we're going to Amina. Amina, please.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah, great. I'd like to say that Liane Mohammed lost by 500 votes. She was a young Palestinian woman, and she lost to a right-wing Zionist NHS privatizer. And I think that was a huge mistake on the part of the Greens. But I find the whole meeting today really worrying because it is so parochial. As far as I'm concerned, and I'm a big activist and I've been active for a long time in this country with the so-called left, which I'm totally disillusioned by. The fight against climate injustice and capitalism is actually, I think, far more vibrant and far more real to ordinary working class people in the global South than it is in the West. I think the West is United States empire and the collective West and its colonial history is going fascist, including India. And I think they are well resourced, they're well funded, they work together. And unlike the left, which are completely fragmented, small, and just you've got people here talking tonight, this meeting, a mass working class movement. Really? They've been talking like this for 30, 40 years. And what happened is that we've got a small, tiny little grouplets that are getting smaller and smaller by the day. And the far right are growing more and more. And I'm angry. I'm angry because I'm a black woman and I'm frightened of living in this country. I'm frightened by fascism. I'm frightened by the fact that we are not fighting climate justice and injustice and what's happening in Palestine. We are actually in a third world war now. We've got three areas we've got Ukraine war, we've got what's happening in the South Asia, people call it Middle East, and Palestine is a litmus test case for that. And we've got the war building up for China. And to claim that all the empires, all the countries are the same is just a joke. No one's mentioned BRICS. I think BRICS is important development for the global South to break the petrodollar and the de-dollarization process, which I think will help the world move away from a unipolar control by the West, the collective West, and its wasteful consumerism. And I just feel angry. I was part of the group that met before the last election. We had the Green mayor invited. A lot of people were angry that she was invited. There were independent people there. There were Labour MPs there. And what happened afterwards? People were greedy. People broke their own pledges. They stood against each other. Someone stood against Craig Murray in Blackburn. I mean, it was pathetic. It was pathetic. People could not work together. And we do need people to work together. We do have real threat in this country, but I can't see it happening because we are too fragmented. Sorry, I'm really angry.
Thank you very much indeed, Amina.
I don't think Corbyn is the answer. There's too much fighting going on within Zarah's group and Corbyn's group, and it's not working. Thank
you very much indeed, Amina. And well, that's an interesting contribution that basically opened up the Overton window in this discussion quite significantly and provides us from a completely fresh perspective on some of the issues being discussed. Next, we're going to How You. Hello, over to you.
Yeah, how are you? Hi, I'm a councillor in Lewisham, and I started off as a Labour Socialist councillor, and then they tried to expel me over Palestine. So when I left on the night of the general election, which I did after door knocking for Jeremy and Leanne and everyone, I actually found that that was such a corrective, like organising, being involved in by-elections. So I echo what everyone's been saying tonight about how frustrating it is, how terminally indecisive I think some leaders in our movement have been. And, I think the real antidote to that is organising. I found that Greens organised, the eco-socialist faction of the Green Party, they really were the cincher for me to join after meeting people like Zach, people like Mothin. By the way, you should all join. You should all join by the 31st of July to vote for Mothin as deputy. Like organising within our local communities really kind of transformed, I think, because sorry, let me take this back a bit. So I really advocate for like being a bit polyamorous, if I might say so, with different parties. Like when I left Labour, I was talking with different independent groups across London and across England. I was also talking with the Greens locally. I think it's really important just to kind of engage in conversations and not just be wedded to certain assumptions or assuming that we're too different. I've encountered so many people who look down on me because now I'm a Green Party councillor, and they think that, all the baggage that comes with being Greens, they want to put that on me. And I've also engaged with people who, thought, other things of, I think it's real. Someone said on this call as well, we shouldn't be too sectarian as well about this new left party, and I totally agree. Like I came to politics because of Corbyn as well. So I do think that we should be more pluralist. We should be engaged in conversations, because what I can tell you is that my local party in the beginning of this year, it was very much led by an older guard. It was very much sort of like unambitious. Let's focus on these certain wards which will have the white middle class vote. I think the leadership race, I joined as well. Many more Labour councillors peeled off and joined the Greens. We've now had another colleague, Liam Srivastava, who's joined Lewisham as well. So we've just been steadily building our Greens organised groups. And I'm not saying that that's everyone's fight. In places like Islington North, I will absolutely be helping Jeremy Corbyn. I don't care if that's not Green Party policy, and if I might get in trouble for it. I believe that that's the right thing to do. So I think we just need to be courageous, but we can't make stereotypes of each other, and we shouldn't underestimate how much can change, because I've seen it with my own eyes in Lewisham that we have a vibrant eco-socialist branch. That wasn't the case a few months ago. So I think that's the antidote, basically. But thank you for this amazing discussion. It's been very, very restorative and helpful.
Thank you, How, and if you can help us sprinkle some of that magic dust on our own local parties in the Green Party, I'm sure we'd all be extremely grateful, because that kind of story is exactly what everyone wants to hear. So I did say we'd take Lubna and we'll squeeze in Steve Jackson. I'm really sorry, Matthew. It's 20 minutes to 9. I don't think we're going to be able to manage that. I do apologise, but I really don't want to take people beyond the 2 hours out of respect for people's evenings. So we'll go to Lubna, please.
Hi, good evening. Yes, thank you for hosting this meeting. It's been, quite a time for us all, I would say. We've noticed with a lot of the groups, the political leaders, there's they're just not in touch with the people. I'm Palestinian. We've had 56 of our relatives slaughtered in this current genocide. It took Green Party, we went to one of the pre-hustings meetings and asked them, what's your policy? It was very confusing. There were statements issued saying that they supported a temporary ceasefire. First, we're like, okay, what business is the Greens, all groups are going to be in supplying arms in the first instance? You would have thought that they would be in complete opposition to that. Then we wanted to clarify that, and we were told by one of the members in there, to be careful in using the word genocide, because some people might find it offensive. And I have to there courtesy in the corner and bow to our oppressors and worry about offending someone when the whole world is witnessing for the first time in history a live stream genocide. And we went there to look for someone who we could vote for, and this was the answer we get. Needless to say, we had our answer and we left extremely upset. Many others left with us. And it has left us in a limbo. I mean, we want an alliance, but what we need, I mean, when you talk about the situation in Palestine right now and you're seeing what's taking place, and then you still have this two-sidism, two-statism, I mean, that's long gone and dead. I mean, it's been completely obliterated with all our people in Palestine. You know, there is no two sides in a genocide. You've got the occupier and you've got the occupied. When it came to the dismantlement of South Africa apartheid, it was for it in its entirety. And this should be the case in Palestine now. And we should not, I mean, it's the end of Zionism. We need a party who's going to strongly stand up and oppose this. You know, there is no, again, two sides. The ideologies, the racist ideologies of Zionism is the very thing that people in principle should be opposing. You cannot stand against racism and still support a racist entity as it conducts its genocide and can only exist on the subjugation of the indigenous people of that land. So we need a party who is in touch with the people, the millions who are standing there. And, you know, now we've got the fight against state repression, where they're trying to silence our voices, suppress us in the movement, bring in draconian legislations and measures and target groups for their non-violent protest.
Look, no, I think we're losing you.
Can you hear me now? Is that any better?
Yeah, you can hear you. Someone else interjected there, but I wasn't experiencing any interference on the sound. So I think perhaps whatever interference there was local to that one person. Sullivan, if you'd like to carry on, please.
Thank you. And, you know, now we've got the government, you know, taking these draconian measures in order to silence our voices. And you've also got definitions, discriminative definitions like the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that has been weaponized to suppress our voices across the movement. Councillors, people who are afraid to speak out. You've got organisations, well, the UK Lawyers for Israel trying to close down divestment cases and everything else with spurious claims of anti-Semitism when anyone opposes Israel's genocide and onslaught of our people. We need a strong opposition to this, a complete, you know, unapologetically, you know, strong leadership who will oppose racism in all its forms. And that includes, and most importantly, Zionism right now. It is a racist entity and it must be dismantled with its racist apartheid state in its entirety. And we really need strong people and advocates to speak up and stand up and not bow to this, you know, this suppression and anti-Semitism smear stick. We need to rise. The people are saying it. They're targeting all of us. Our very basic civil liberties are all on the line here. If this can happen now, and you know, we just have a mirror to look in for what's coming to all of us later. Thank you.
Thank you, Lubna, very much indeed. And then to close the contributions from the floor, over to Steve. Just a couple of minutes, please, Steve, before we go to our main speakers to wind up. Steve Jackson, please.
Cheers, Danny. Expertly chaired as ever. And yeah, solidarity, Lubna. I actually submitted a motion about the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism to Green Party conference today, so people should look out for that. So I joined the Green Party after the general election last year, explicitly because I wanted to campaign for Jeremy and some other independents. Like, I was massively inspired by Jeremy Corbyn, and now I'm active in the Green Party. If a party of the working class, if an actual, genuine, strong, fighting left-wing party appeared and was able to counter reform and their division and fight Labour austerity and complicity in genocide, I would absolutely be advocating for the Green Party, working with them. I don't think it'd be sensible to abandon the Green Party, the 2 million votes, the national infrastructure, the nearly 900 councillors. But I just have a plea. That is what I would do if there was such a party. But I have a plea to those people who want that to happen and who are committed to building that, to be realistic. Because if you want that party to happen, the announcement that has just come is not going to lead to it. And the people involved in it are not going to lead to it. We've got a competition of various egos and various genuinely socially and economically conservative elements fighting for control over who gets to use Jeremy Corbyn's celebrity to create their version of a party, to the complete exclusion of grassroots, to the complete exclusion of the disparate left across the country. And they can't even get their shit together enough to do a coherent announcement. There's no party. There's a mailing list and a couple of celebrities. I would love it to turn into something as I have outlined. And if you want that to happen, please try and make it happen, but recognize you are going to have to wrestle with people who voted against a tax on private schools, who are advocating for including landlordism in their coalition, people who want to completely shut you out. That is the people who are in control of this project. 30 self-appointed leaders doing backroom dealings incoherently and incompetently and anti-democratically. Please go and make it happen. But let's deal with the reality, which is that the early signs are not good and things will need to change if you want the hypothetical party to appear.
Thank you, Steve. And, I think whilst we're at it, Steve and Lubna talking about the IHRA definition, for example, of anti-Semitism, Green Left, it's worth mentioning, Green Left, jointly with the then BDS movement within the Green Party, was instrumental in organising what opposition we could muster against the adoption of that as part of a package of documents as part of the ethical framework of the Green Party. A number of years ago, I was one of the people who spoke during the debate against it. I pointed out that what we adopted as part of the framework was an internally incoherent and inconsistent set of documents, and we ought not to adopt it on those grounds, if nothing else. Although the vote went the wrong way, it was interesting that the Jewish Chronicle, a few days later, picked up on the very points that I had been making and published a story about the Green Party adopting not just the IHRA definition, but at the same time the Jerusalem Declaration and various other documents simultaneously, and leaving itself in an internally conflicted position. I think we have a good track record there. However, it is time now to invite our speakers to make a few closing remarks. I'm going to give them each 2 minutes. We're going to do it in the same order in which they spoke, simply because that's easy for me. So we shall go to Beccy and then to Roger and then to Faiz and then to Joseph. So Beccy, if I can ask you to take 2 minutes just to sum up, please.
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming on this call today and for the passion that has been expressed. As Danny explained at the beginning, I'm one of the co-leaders of I'm not a leader, but co-chair of Green Left. Danny formerly was also a co-chair with me. The thing that I wanted to bring to us in terms of where I think we need to be going forward is in an internationalist space, because that's the space that I've come from throughout my life, but also which I see is going to be beneficial not just to this little corner of the world where I live, which is Dover, but also the planet, and that the issue about climate change and of course migration, which is going to cause a huge amount of climate refugees, is just something that is so big and so difficult for us to take forward. It must be central to our organising as we go forward. And I thank you all for the contributions. I couldn't start with any of them, but I wanted to just say one thing about Lubna's position too, is that in the early 2000s, I was part of Black Students' campaign with the National Union of Students, and I worked alongside a Palestinian woman called Fatima Hello, and I saw firsthand how violent the Jewish section of the National Union of Students were. So much so that they followed, not realizing that I was in the toilets doing my jab, but they followed her into the toilets in order to cause her harm, just for being a Palestinian student. This is how apartheid works in Palestine, and this was a wonderful woman who had lost almost all of her family and was brought up in a Lebanese refugee camp. If we don't, on the left, understand the humanity that we are allowing to be destroyed as we go forward, we are failing both ourselves and the communities that we seek to represent. And I just wanted to say that, even if it's not sort of like incredibly viable for our needs now, but it must be central to what we do going forward. And that is the unity that we need to have, a unity that says humanity comes first. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Difficult to follow that, but Roger Silverman has the job. Roger, 2 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you very much, comrades. I think it's been a really very, very stimulating discussion. It's been a robust discussion too, and that's exactly how it ought to be. We want to get to the point. We don't want to waste time in flowery mutual compliments, although I think we all do respect one another, and I certainly have very much respect for the comrades who have spoken, and some of them made a great impression on me. I have to mention on that Lubna's contribution, which I thought was very moving and very, very relevant. Now, comrades, some of the comrades seem to be a bit too quick to write off the New Left Party. I don't know whether or not it's going to develop. I don't know whether it's going to be a reformist social democratic party from the very beginning. I don't know whether it's going to be fully democratic or not. But I do feel we've come a huge way. It's a great achievement, and we've been waiting and fighting and campaigning for this for years. This new party is absolutely necessary, but it's come very, very late. It should have come 5 years ago, and we would not be in the situation that we are in today, hurtling towards disaster of a likely victory of a very far right so-called reform government. So it's an achievement, and comrades have been a bit too quick to write it off. Some of the comrades, because it's only been in existence, even as a gleam in the eye, for 1 week. It's only been announced that a new party is going to be created. Yes, I'm not satisfied. We of the Campaign for a Mass Workers' Party, we don't see this as the final goal of our campaign. We see it as just the very, very first step in our campaign, because we're saying we don't want a party which is run from the top down. We don't want a party where the rules and the policies and the constitution are set up by either Jeremy Corbyn or Zarah, Sultana, or by anybody else. We want it to be a democratic party from the beginning. And we have already raised the demand as the main plank on our platform of the Campaign for a Mass Workers' Party is to say whatever arrangements are made now should be just the very, very necessary, legally necessary interim arrangements, but the very, very first goal of the new setup must be to hold a democratic founding conference. And we're saying that must be during the conference season of this year, not put off till kingdom come, but that this within 3 or 4 months. 2 or 3 months even, that we need the founding conference of the new party, and it is entirely up to the new party to decide everything democratically, to decide the name of the party, the constitution of the party, the standing orders of the party, the policy of the party, the manifesto of the party, everything about the new party. And for one or two comrades said, "Oh, just a reformist party." That is up to us. That is up to it. It will not be decided. It will not be determined by a couple of MPs or ex-MPs at the top. That's the reason why it's taken so long, actually, because some of the people at the top were afraid that they didn't have the apparatus in order to control it. Well, that's quite right, they don't. And with the tens of thousands of people who poured in to support this party, that is an irresistible force which is going to decide all these issues. So what I just want to finish by saying, I hope this is not the last meeting that we have. I hope that we can continue this discussion, and me or other comrades of the Campaign for a Mass Workers' Party will always be absolutely willing and, in fact, very, very happy to join you again and to continue this discussion. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you very much indeed, Roger. Next we go to Faiz. 2 minutes, please, Faiz.
Thank you, Danny. Look, I just like to summarize. We are a party of the left. We are not a no-name party, which does not exist. We are full of lefties, full of people who have come from the Corbynite side of Labour. We recognize that we have had mistakes in the past, and we're moving rapidly to fix those. I think what Lubna said horrified me, because we are one of the only major parties who've passed a conference resolution on genocide, apartheid, and in favor of the BDS movement. Steve has today filed a motion rejecting the IHRA definition. I have filed a motion for strategic alliances. There has been a motion for against NATO. We are in the process of electing a leadership team, not just Zach, but deputy leaders, GPEX members, etc. We would urge people of the left, while they wait for this new party, to come and join us, strengthen our hands, and make this party a natural home, make the Greens a natural home for the Green Party. I have huge respect for Jeremy. I want Lian Mohammed to end the House of Commons career of West Streeting. I want Andrew Feinstein to eliminate Keir Starmer's prime ministership. We are all in that same boat. But what we will not have is the Greens stepping aside for no-name lefty candidates who can put together barely 50 votes amongst them all. And so that is not going to happen. So we are very respectful of genuine leaders, and we will work very closely with them. But this expectation that somebody can just come in and say, "We are from the New Left Party, why don't you stand aside?" that's not going to happen. So, but anyway, I think we're really glad for this discussion.
Thank you, Faiz. And I'll give a couple of minutes to Joseph Haley, please. Joseph.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've seen some of the fault lines tonight, potential fault lines in the discussion. Solidarity to Lubna. And when I was international coordinator of the Green Party, Lubna, in 2008, I managed to get BDS, boycott, divestment and sanctions, through the Green Party conference. And following that, a small Zionist section in the party began to harass me. And I mean, a much smaller scale than what happened to Jeremy Corbyn, but they began to dissect my emails for anti-Semitic tropes and all the usual familiar methods that they've used, especially more recently. The IRHA definition, of course, they were beginning to discuss that when I left the party, and I could see already the tendency for accepting that and warned against it at the time. But unfortunately, my voice wasn't listened to. I think it's important. I mean, Roger has said as well that, you know, we're in the very early days of this new party. Obviously, I don't like the way in which the announcements have been made and so on. And Transform has, you know, given its view on that. We have said that we want a democratic party. We have signed up to an appeal by Ken Loach, Ian Hudson of the Bakers Union and others, that there be a conference, as Roger has said, this autumn, and that the party is fully democratic. I think we need to be clear that the announcement of the leadership was an interim leadership. That is the vision, that it's an interim leadership until such time as the party itself democratically decides to elect its own leaders. And that issue is very, very central to us. But I think, as we've all said, you know, I was very impressed by how you, the councillor in Lewisham, you know, putting aside sectarian tendencies and willing to work for people like Jeremy and willing to put our shoulders to the wheel together against the fascist enemy. So I hope, like others, that we can continue this dialogue and go forward together.
Thank you, Joseph. So I think we've heard contributions that would urge Green Party eco-socialists to migrate from the Green Party towards a new party. We've heard contributions at the other end of the spectrum that would like to emphasise the preeminence of the Green Party as the party of the left in the UK. And we've heard a lot of contributions somewhere in the middle that recognise that a new party will come into being, that the Green Party will persist, that the Green Party, one hopes, will soon be led by Zach Polanski, and that configuration will create possibilities for forms of cooperation. Those forms, there are multiple possible forms that cooperation might take, and perhaps we could pursue some of them or all of them or none of them, but none of them doesn't seem to be a good idea. So the debate increasingly as we move forward will focus on, you know, what kind of cooperation we could undertake, whether we work jointly under a shared brand, which is the you know, the Popular Front idea, whether we stand down in particular areas in order that the party with the strongest candidate or the strongest prospects of defeating Labour or Conservative can stand, whether it's a national agreement, whether it's a local initiatives, etc., etc. There's a million and one possibilities, and as we go forward, all of these things will have to be considered. But I think we're all agreed that the case is urgent. We're all agreed that the threat of fascism is present and real. We're all agreed that the only way to defeat it will involve our combined efforts, and that by remaining factional and splintered, we are going to usher in our own defeat and the rise of fascism. So the debate will continue. For those who are in the Green Party, we've heard also about the importance of the forthcoming conference, and I will just note some of the motions that have been mentioned. There is one, of course, on the IHRA, very important, one on NATO, one to permit the Green Party to participate in alliances, electoral alliances going forward. Nicole has a motion suggesting that the party put itself on a cooperative footing, formally and legally. And I also have one, once again, inviting the party to alter its political strategy, which there is an existing document, the political strategy, which is intensely one-dimensional and electoralist only, and focuses all of our energy and our money and our staff time and everything else into target to win and cranking out a few more council seats each year at the expense of broader participation in street campaigns, liaising with NGOs and other campaign bodies on a whole range of different issues. And I think it's unhealthy, and I think the Green Party can be much more politically vibrant. So that's a little plug, and I apologise for making that at the very end of the meeting. Thank you all very much indeed for coming along. Thank you especially to those who are non-Green Party members who've come along to participate, especially our guest speakers, Roger Silverman and Joseph Healy, for coming along to speak to us today. It is, I'm afraid, 5 minutes over time, for which sincere apologies. Best wishes to everyone. Have a great rest of your evening, and we look forward to continuing to debate this issue further with you all as the months and years tick away. Talk to you soon. Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Thanks, comrades.
Cheers.